All right, what's up, everyone? It's Zach, and today I'm here with a very special guest. I'm here with Dr. Maria Cristina. Maria, how are you?
I am great. Good to be here.
Good, good. Yeah, thank you for being here. I really appreciate it, and I'm excited to have a great conversation with you. For those of you who are listening in on our conversation today, Maria is indeed a doctor. She is also a certified personal trainer, health and wellness coach, and she's an entrepreneur. She helps folks to be empowered and to live the healthiest life that they possibly can. So, of course, if you know me, you know that's stuff that I love and that I'm really passionate about. So I'm really excited for this conversation. But Maria, do you kind of mind going through your background, who you are? Doing all that good stuff.
Not at all, Zach. So the doctor comes from my academic background. So I was a college president for 20 years, in education for over 45 years, stepped out of education at age 69, and watched at that time my colleagues' health declining, and thinking to myself that was going to be me too. So the big wake up call for me was a colleague that was the university president in our system, and we had, let's see, so 8 presidents at the time, university, community college, and state university, and what happened was I was watching them with heart attacks and stress, and and then literally a death at on the job.
Mm,
And I thought, okay, so that's my pathway. Getting older slower and feeling like there was no real pathway ahead. If you don't know how you should be eating, and there's so much confusion about what's healthy, and you don't know what exercises you should be doing because there's so much really chatter out there about what works and what doesn't, and so
mhm.
it's so confusing, and that confusion just causes us to be, and it causes paralysis.
Yeah.
We don't do anything because we're so darn confused about what we should be doing. And then we look around as we age, and I want to talk about this progression of where we go in our 20s and 30s versus where we are in our 60s and 70s, because I think that's an important point for your audience to
Mhm.
hear. But it is that the pathway that's needed is not that difficult, but if you don't have it, you end up in this state of looking around and seeing people your age and believing there must not be another way.
Right. Yeah. I think first of all, I appreciate you sharing your background, and you make a lot of good points with what you said. And I think that there's so much information and honestly misinformation when it comes to, nutrition and what we should eat and what exercise is and how to stay healthy. And I think it's unfortunate because I've talked to a lot of folks through this podcast and just in my personal life who, articulate that maybe when they hit 40, 50, 60, it's kind of like, oh, well, what's the point in kind of trying? My life's already on the decline. Who cares, if I get exercise or how I eat these days?
So true, Zach. So
Yeah.
I want to go deeper into that a little bit, because
Yeah.
when we're in our 20s, we don't think about being in our 40s, and
Right.
when we're in our 20s, we can do things we can't do in our 40s. So
Right.
in our 40s, our metabolism slows down and we process food differently. And the things that could work or we could get by with in our 20s and 30s, we can no longer do that.
Mm-hmm.
The problem that I see is that we establish habits in our 20s and 30s that do
Okay.
not bode well for us as we move along. So we start thinking to ourselves, well, I can drop the weight, I can be okay, I can eat the junk food, I'm fine. And that's in your 20s and 30s. Well, that just doesn't work. If you keep up that same pattern of behavior,
Mm,
now things start to slide down. Now, in our 20s and 30s, who thinks about being 50, right?
right.
Well, you don't, because you're invisible. You're just your Superman, right? You're
Yeah.
Superman at that time. So that doesn't dawn on any of us at that age that it should be as important as it is, unless we're an athlete and we just grow up with that mentality. We just don't think that way. So the problem that I see is that as we enter our 40s now, we're afraid to be 50. Right? We're scared
Mm-hmm.
of 50 because that's in the mind of many, that's getting old. Okay, so now we start to absorb that mentality about what age is, and it's a downward it's a downward spiral.
Right.
Because what we're going to do is our bodies are going to go where our minds take us. And so if we think in our 40s, oh my gosh, I'm going to be old in my 50s, now I'm going to start slowing down and I'm going to act in the stereotypical way I believe a 50-year-old should act. So I should
Mm-hmm.
be careful. I shouldn't. And then doing the other thing you said, which is, oh, well, I'm 50 now. I can eat what I want. I can drink what I want. I'm good. I've reached this age, so all bets are off. I can do the same thing I did in my 20s and 30s. And the reality is, all that does is make the next years even harder
Right.
because the 50s can be difficult, especially for women going through menopause. It can be very difficult. So if we just give it all up in our 50s, the 60s are really difficult.
Yeah.
And in between the 60s and 70s, our decline is substantial. So what we do in terms of our mindset in our 20s and 30s is going to put us in a better place in our 50s and 60s and 70s. And so my my hope is that people under 40 understand that look, the years roll on very, very quickly,
Yeah.
very quickly. Okay, so I'm 77 now, and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, where did
Right.
all those years go? Where did they go? And it just goes in a flash, and we don't think about how important what we put into our bodies
Yeah.
as we age really, really is. Now, that's not to say that in your 60s, because I did it at 69, you can't have a moment to yourself to say, I got to go a different pathway. I cannot continue down this pathway because it isn't going to end up well.
Right.
And so we can turn it around for the most part at any age, depending on how far down the bad path we have gone,
Mm-hmm.
right. So I hadn't gone down the too much, well, a social drinker, and what do we think about a social drinker is like maybe a glass or two a night, so oh, how bad could that be? Well,
Right.
that can be absolutely injurious to your health. But we're a country where 80% of us are drinkers. We
Yeah.
drink alcohol, and we think nothing of it. We're social events often revolve around alcohol.
Mm-hmm.
And what alcohol does is it attacks three major organ systems of the body. And so we're doing detriment in our 60s if we think we can just keep on going that way. And in our 70s, we think we can keep on going that way. And then it starts demonstrating itself as we look at people who are stereotypically aging. People in their 60s that are having mobility issues, people in their 70s that are falling and not recovering. That is not that's kind of the average of
Yeah.
what happens to us when we just go down the path of not following a protocol. And it doesn't have to be so intrusive. And that's the other thing that stops us from beginning the path. There's the confusion about it, about what to do. And then there is the belief that the hill is too high to climb. It's going to be too
Mm-hmm.
hard. I'm going to have to spend all day in the gym. And who wants to live like that? And so then we don't start. For women, it's especially the stereotype of what weightlifting or resistance training is. No one wants that because nobody wants to have those big old hulky muscles. No woman wants to look like a man. So then we say to ourselves, well, I'm not going to do that because
Mm-hmm.
I want to maintain my femininity. So
Right.
therefore, I'm not going to do it, which is just the biggest myth. But it is what I believed, and it was it was at that point of a chubby chunkiness and almost despair that my financial advisor, who had seen me just get chubbier and chubbier and chubbier over a decade, said to me, I think you should see my trainer. By that time, I had done everything. Okay, so I had tried a bunch of diets, nothing worked. Oh, low fat, non fat. Okay, the worst thing you can do. I tried all of that, and then getting into various exercise programs, gym memberships, which you never, you never go because you don't have to,
Right.
and it wasn't a big investment. So I had tried all of that. So my resistance was low at that point. So I went, and what I discovered is that is absolutely the pathway to living a different life. That is a way of gaining muscle. And there is a doctor, a researcher right now who is saying she has coined the term muscle centric. She's a muscle centric doctor, and she says muscle is the organ of longevity. And
Mm.
her study is showing that if we don't develop muscle, our immune system's not going to be as strong. Our ability to have better sleep, our cognitive function, everything is kind of bound up in that muscle development. That if we don't get it, we're going to watch our muscle mass and our bone density decline over the years. And that starts at 40. So if we do nothing, where are we at 80? And that's where we see people aging stereotypically.
Yeah.
And we don't have to do that.
Yeah, it's really interesting to think about. And I know that, Maria, you were mentioning how kind of like in your 20s and your 30s, that's when you need to kind of recognize that you're going to get older someday and you need to establish these habits and take care of your body early on. Because even though when you feel like you're invincible when you're younger, life catches up to you and you kind of notice, how things impact you differently. I mean, I think back in my life, like when I was a teenager, I thought I was invincible. I could do anything. And then even, a decade later, I'm like, wow, my body doesn't recover the same way, or I can't, stay up as late or whatever it might be. So I think that's a good point. And, something that I'd love to ask and pick your brain on is for me, I'm 27 right now. So like what are things that I could be doing or someone around my age could or should be thinking about so we aren't kind of stuck in that progression of aging stereotypically down the road?
I think 27 is a great age to start establishing habits that can be there for a lifetime. And one of the first things is what what sugary things are you going to put into your body?
Okay.
So what we know is that sugar, well, and flour are the new. They're called the new cocaine and heroin. They're that
Oh wow.
addictive.
Okay.
Yeah, and what they do to our bodies is very, very destructive. So the whole thing of energy drinks, the worst thing you can put into your body, or any of these, any of the cola drinks, fruit juices, any of that, those juice drinks that are sweetened are going to spike your glucose, and that causes the aging process to move progressively faster.
Mm.
So who wants to age faster than they have to and put their body at risk? Well, if you're intaking sugar and flour, and that's most of what we do with our what's called SAD, the standard American diet,
Hmm.
um, that it's a problem, and we're being deceived by the food manufacturing industry and by the beverage industry. So there is a book by Mani Hari called Feeding You Lies, and it's an expose on how we are being marketed to, so that we will think something natural means that it's good for us, something that
Right.
is non-fat, oh, that must be good. No. So what's going into our food first is deceptive labeling and then additives, so that we're going to keep coming back because there's an addictive ingredient in that particular product.
Right.
And the breads on the shelves today, you can't even find one that is really good for you. You really can't. So how do they keep that bread soft and yummy and on the shelves for that long a period of time in order to sell? Well, they're gonna put preservatives in it that our bodies, are going to be at risk to
Okay.
intaking that. So, and that starts early. So we start our decline in our health often in our 20s and 30s because that's what we're eating and drinking, all the things that we shouldn't. So if we want to at 20 in our 20s not feel like we're aging too quickly, then we want to say, wait a minute, do I really need that extra bit of alcohol? Do I really need that donut or that, that Krispy Kreme thing or something that is filled with sugar and artificial additives?
Right. And now, I agree with everything you're saying, and I think that like you said, sugar is it's terrible for us, but we're kind of marketed, just to death. Like you should eat it, or it's good, not good for you, but it's good, it's tasty, enjoy it. Now, for something like sugar, and we'll say flour too, do you think those are things that we should completely avoid, or I mean, do you think it is okay to have it in moderation, or what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I would say never buy granulated sugar
Okay.
so that you're not adding it to anything. But even if you never buy one of those bags of granulated sugar, it's in everything.
Right.
It's in everything. So I don't think you can completely avoid it. And I'm not saying never take a drink. It's
Mm-hmm.
to say, let's be more intentional. And if you
Mm,
are going to have that particular treat, don't supersize it.
yeah.
Don't supersize it. And so I think if we're intentional, we can say, okay, I know I'm going to this celebration and there's going to be cake and I'm going to have my piece. But I'm not going to do that every day.
Yes.
It's going to be on occasion and I'm going to really enjoy the experience because that satiates me for that period of time, but it has to last a little bit longer than one day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I like that you said kind of like enjoying that treat and enjoying the experience. I think a lot of times maybe we don't realize that like sometimes a lot of times honestly food can be surrounded by experiences and enjoyment, whereas we don't have to go buy a full cake and eat the whole thing. Like we can just have a piece of cake and enjoy it for your birthday or the birthday of a loved one, and like that's enough. You don't have to kind of go overboard with the sugar, and just be intentional with what you are consuming. I think is a good kind of message there.
It is indeed. And I guess the other hint would be, as we're being intentional about our choices, is that we tend to eat really, really quickly. And
Yeah.
when we do that, our brain doesn't even have enough time to know you've had enough. And so, one thing that I recommend to clients is try a 20-minute meal. Now, if you're eating by yourself, the average person eats that full meal in far less than 5 minutes. So getting to 20 minutes is like really a stretch, but the goal is to just inch your way up to a little bit longer so that you're enjoying the experience
Mm.
of the food, the taste, the color on the colors that are there and the way that the food is arranged. That you make that meal a special occasion that you're going to savor bite by bite. And another trick in doing this is when you're with friends at the table is be the last person to finish. So you're playing your own little game and you're the last person to finish the plate. Now, if you're with a group of friends, it's pretty easy to do that because there's a lot of conversation going on
Yeah.
and you're not just rushing through the meal. You're being more intentional. So the meal is slowing down anyway. And what you can do is say, okay, I'm going to be the last person to finish this meal.
I really like that because that really resonates with me. I feel like whether it's just something I've developed over time from working and, saying like, oh, I need to have a quick meal or something, or just being a busy person. I feel like anytime I eat, I just like scarf down my food. And like you said, I finish well before 5 minutes. And that you said, kind of like be more intentional, take your time, inch your way up to kind of like those 20 minutes. And I like gamifying it of like when you're with friends, like be the last one to finish it. I think that makes a lot of sense. And I think when I think back to times where I've eaten really quickly, like, finish a meal in a couple minutes, I don't feel full. I don't feel satiated. I feel like I didn't even eat when I could have had like, a lot of food, but just went through it so quickly.
Absolutely the case. And I think that's kind of the American way, Zach.
Yeah.
We are on the go. That's why fast food is so popular. And I can remember going through the fast food, getting the fries, the burger, the sugary whatever, and on my way to classes. And I would have a long commute in on the LA freeways, and I would um, whiz in, get that oversized whatever, and and scarf it down very, very, very quickly.
Yeah.
So I think that we're just used to doing that. And I have clients that I said, okay, now what did you have for lunch? Oh, well, I didn't have time, so I just had, I had some nuts and a little bit of yogurt. Well, okay, that's not good.
Right.
that's, that's not a good thing either. So we can sometimes eat too little, or we can eat too quickly, or we can eat too much.
Yeah. So you just mentioned all the different ways we could eat, right? We could have too little, too much, too quickly. How do we find that perfect balance?
Well, I think some of the things that we've already talked about, and that is um, assessing where you are right now. And so you start with your own baseline. How long? So you time yourself. How long
Okay.
does it take? And then it's okay. Let's say it's at 3 minutes, because that's kind of the average, 2, 3 minutes that people finish their meal. Okay, so yeah, you're not satiated. Your brain doesn't even know you had anything. So, can you make that 3 minutes 4 minutes? Can you make
Hmm.
that 4 minutes 5 minutes? Can you just be more focused on the process of food intake? Of course, hydration is another thing that's really important.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I think hydration is something that I think a lot of us kind of struggle with.
It's important. And so, yeah, because we just forget about it.
Yeah.
So what I recommend is at the beginning of the day, you portion out what you're going to be drinking and you take it with you. And that is your way of knowing how much should I have for the day. Well, you put it in your big container. You know how much is in there. By the end of the day, you've either finished it or you haven't. So now that gives you your next benchmark, your next way of assessing where are you right now.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And now when it comes to hydration, like, is there a recommendation that everyone should follow, or does it depend on the person and their lifestyle, their age?
You know, the biggest recommendation is to try to get about 62 to 64 ounces,
Okay.
and that's pretty much for everyone. Uh, One thing that we do know is that coffee isn't something that's dreadful and awful. And we kind of hear that, yes, it goes back, and the trends for drinking coffee and the support for it, um, is there, and then it isn't. No, we shouldn't be drinking coffee. We should be drinking green tea. Well, I don't think there's anything wrong with drinking coffee. Now, if you drink it excessively all day long, then it can be very dehydrating, and you shouldn't be
Hmm.
doing that. But starting with coffee in the morning is a very good thing. The other thing that I recommend is prioritizing sleep. And this is something that we do not do in our 20s and
No.
30s because we just can go and go on just very limited amount of sleep.
Right.
But it is something to be aware of because it does affect cognitive functioning as we age. So maybe we can do it in our 20s and 30s, but as we get out of our 30s, we really should be taking a second look at how much we value sleep.
Do you have any tips or advice for getting more sleep or getting better quality sleep?
Well, the biggest one seems to be the regularity of your time of sleep, of when you go to bed and when you get up. So keeping the body on its own little body clock, whether that's 6 hours, 7 hours, or 8 hours, where every day, every night, you retire at the same time and you get up at the same time. So that seems to really improve the quality of sleep. Then, of course, getting a darkened room, making sure the room temperature is correct, making sure that all extraneous noises are out of your sleep environment. Those are all the things that seem to be able to increase the quality of sleep that we get.
Okay, perfect. And Maria, from talking to you, it sounds like really when it comes to being the healthiest version of ourselves, it truly is so many different aspects of our life. It's the nutrition, it's the sleep, it's the exercise. It's not just one thing that's really going to help us achieve that healthiest state. It's kind of a combination of everything, right?
You're absolutely correct. No, one thing alone is not going to do it. So my dear colleague that passed away, the university president, he lived on 4 hours of sleep, Diet Coke, and he had a trainer. So you see the mismatch there.
Hmm.
Okay, so he was very stressed. He had a huge amount of stress. At some level, he understood he needed to do something, so he had a trainer. But see, that wasn't enough. So between the stress and the lack of sleep and what he was putting into his body, the the uh, the amount of exercise didn't overcome all of that.
Mm, yeah, that makes sense. So really we need everything. We can't rely on just one of those things. Maybe in our 20s or 30s we might be able to get by with just one, but thinking about the longevity of life, we really need to hone in all of those different aspects, it sounds like.
We do, and so I think it's not not thinking of it as too much in your 20s. It always, I think, the issue of what you put into your body is important,
Hmm.
because even if it doesn't show, because I can remember my 20s, I could drop 20, not 20, I could drop 5 pounds over a weekend,
Yeah.
and it just didn't have a couple of desserts, that's it. Well, that was then, and now it's very, very different in terms of how I lose weight. But in your 20s, why not establish one good practice?
Right.
Just one good practice. Now, that could be how you're going to avoid sugar or how you're going to limit alcohol. And as you age, you add one more thing. So an interesting book is Younger Next Year, and the authors of that book, Crawley and Lodge, are saying to us that as we age, we should be doing more, not less. Very counterintuitive,
Yeah.
because what we hear is, oh boy, if you're over 50, you gotta slow down, don't you?
Right.
Well, okay, so that's not true according to what they're saying. They're saying if we want to age better, we need to step it up as we age. And so I think you can do that in your 20s by thinking, okay, what one little thing can I do now? I can get away with a whole lot in my 20s, but what one little thing can I do? And then as you get into your 30s, okay, I already mastered sugar. Now, what other thing can I do?
Right.
Okay, and all along the way, knowing that if you just do that and you do not move, that is not enough. You've got to put together with that one choice of what you're going to do in terms of what you're putting into your body. What are you going to do in terms of movement for your body? And that can be cycling, or it can be skateboarding, it can be anything that is getting the heart rate up. But best of all, as you move through the decades, is resistance training.
Yeah. Okay. So you would say that especially as we get older, the resistance training would maybe be a little more important than like the cardiovascular training?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, not to disparage a cardio, because I do cardio as well, but the strength training, there's just really, um, there isn't anything that really replaces it.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. And I know you touched on it a little bit, but there is that like misinformation or misconception that a lot of women say like, oh, I don't want to strength train because they don't want to get bulky or get these big muscles. But I mean, as you obviously know from your experiences and from coaching, like that's not going to happen. It would require a lot and probably some you know just different
Enhancements.
enhancements. Yeah, that's what I'm trying to say. Different drug use or what have you to really
Absolutely,
you know
absolutely.
get that huge bulky physique, which I don't think either of us endorse the idea of
No,
enhancements for anything.
no, not
Yeah,
at all. And what I like about, I'm a natural body competitor, and what that
right,
means is that when I compete with just in federations that are testing all of the athletes to make
right,
sure that there's no illegal substances
yep,
that are enhancing the performance. And so that to me is doing the right thing in the industry as opposed to really glorifying the extra bulky muscles that often are not achieved in a natural way.
right. Yeah, and that's kind of the tough thing about maybe social media or just kind of the world we live in right now, where there could be some glorification of people that are enhanced on gear and different substances that are giving unrealistic expectations or pictures of quote unquote health, when really you're kind of the farthest away from good health when you're taking these enhancements and substances.
Absolutely. You're putting something artificial into your bodies. And so, we're exposed to so many toxins in our environment anyway
Hmm.
that we can do little about. So we got to take control over the things that we can do something about.
Right. Definitely. I think that's important. Control what you can control, and just it's very I won't say easy, but it's very possible, and there's a lot of different ways that we can take care of our own health and become our own healthiest version by just doing little things that will add up over time and kind of compound together.
I love that you said that. It's doing the little things, and it does compound over time, and we discount that. We go into the thinking about health believing that it has to be such a great um, ex, you know expenditure of time and effort, and that isn't the case at all. Just a little bit at a time
Yeah.
can really add up to so much.
Exactly. And, to anyone that's listening, if you're like, oh, well, what does that mean? Or what does a little thing look like? I mean, I think a lot of us think like, oh, I have to go to the gym and start working out every day or, 6 days a week. Just, you can go like once a week, and then maybe that turns into a couple times a week. And maybe that comes, a regular routine, or, you can slowly reduce the sugar intake that you have and until you can reduce it completely. Like you don't have to just flip a switch and automatically go to the complete other end of the spectrum. You can kind of, like you said, kind of inch your way towards these goals.
Absolutely. You don't have to go cold turkey on the sugar,
Right.
but yes, over time. And so I sometimes start with what can you commit to? How
Yeah.
important is your health to you?
Hmm.
And when we don't have our health, we really have very little.
Right.
We really have very little. What can we enjoy in our life if we've diminished our health? So if we can get to that point that it's important, then the next step is how much time am I willing to give to it?
Right.
And what if you say, well, I haven't given anything to it, so I'll give 10 minutes. Can I commit to 10 minutes? So if you do free weights for 10 minutes a day, that's substantial.
Yeah.
But what's 10 minutes? So I tell my ladies, okay, you put your light weights around the house and you do 5 minutes when you can, and you do another 5 minutes when you can. Now you've got your 10 minutes. And pretty soon that's so easy. You're willing to do a little bit more and a little bit
Hmm.
more.
Yeah. I love that. So, Maria, are you still currently taking on clients right now?
Yes, I have an online program but it's only going to go to the end of the year,
Okay.
and I call it the 77 Club. But it's for anyone that wants accountability. Okay, so this is what happens to us, is that we kind of know what to do. We kind of know that we should be eating correctly. We kind of know that we should be exercising, but then we don't do it, okay, because we cheat on ourselves. So the
Right.
77 Club, I meet with, and this is a women's group, but
Okay.
I meet with a group online for two sessions per month, and we hold ourselves accountable. And then I work with them on what to eat and how to exercise, and I give demonstrations, and then they go into a closed Facebook group, and I give more support there. So that's my accountability program. But I'm glad you mentioned this, because everyone needs this level of accountability. So
Yeah.
it can be a friend, it can be a spouse, it can be a declaration at work. Hey, I'm doing this, and so now you're looking for people who will support your effort, not undermine it. So
Mm-hmm.
once you've said I'm letting go on sugar, you expect they're not going to bring you a donut in the morning.
Right. Yeah, I think that's important, and it's really cool that you have these programs and that you're helping people and helping with the accountability. So you said that through the end of this year, you have your program that is a group for women.
Yes,
Okay.
but I also love to talk about these issues, the issues of longevity, in terms of what we know from those who have been studying the process of how we age for 20, 30, and more years. So there's a lot that we know. So
Mm-hmm.
I love to talk about that. So
Okay.
I like to do talks on wellness. I like to do workshops on wellness. That's a favorite thing. And then I do have a website, and that has pretty much everything I have to offer. With
Okay.
my blog, I have my blogs there. I have my podcasts where I've been a podcast guest. I'm not a podcaster. I'm a guest.
Mm-hmm.
So I appreciate you having me
Of
on
course.
your program. Really do. So my website has basically everything I have to offer, and then I do a destination retreat, a wellness retreat for just 6 women every year. And this past year, I did Costa Rica, and this coming February, I will do the elite retreat in Panama, which is
Ooh,
going to be quite an exciting adventure that will jumpstart the fitness journey for those ladies that participate.
I love that. That's so awesome. Maria, what's your website where you have all this information?
My website is Dr. Maria Cristina, and that's Cristina.net.
Okay, perfect. And I will also put um, the website in the description of this episode. So to anyone listening, go down to the description and check out Maria's website where she has all of the different services she offers and just information about her podcast she's been on, which I'm sure this one will be there as well, and her blog. So definitely check out her website and connect with her if maybe you're a woman and you're looking for someone to help with your health and fitness and keep you accountable, or like she said, if you just want to chat about these kind of things and longevity, or maybe you have your own podcast and you want to feature Maria. She's a great person to connect with. So definitely be sure to check out her website to learn more about her and to keep in touch.
Well, Zach, it's been a pleasure.
Yes, it has been a pleasure as well. Is there anything that you want to leave with our listeners tonight?
Well, I usually give 3 tips
Okay.
for health and wellness. And the first is to get into the mindset that it counts, that it's important, and that you're going to dedicate yourself to it. So it's a mindset first, and not thinking because another birthday has rolled around, you're old. Okay, so
Right.
you're not old. So we're old when we think we're old. And once we start doing that, then that's when the downward spiral begins.
Right.
It really don't want that. So that's the first thing, is mindset. The second is meals, and we've talked about that. Is being in, very intentional about how you eat, when you eat, what you eat. And the last M is movement, and
Okay.
moving every single day.
I love it. Those are great tips and things that I think I'm pretty good with, but I definitely think after having this conversation are things that I can work on. I think the big one for me is being intentional with my meals. So I'm going to be sure to incorporate that in my life. And to everyone listening, I challenge you to take the tips that Maria just provided us and to try them and to let us know how they work for you.
Well, Zach, I'm wishing you healthy years ahead.
Yes, same to you, Maria. It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for the time to talk today, and I'm sure we'll be in touch soon. But best of luck with everything in your journey, and wishing you all the health in the world.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. Bye now.
Bye.